the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Good morning, Anthony. Good morning, Anthony. You'll be enjoying the beautiful weather we've got today. I wonder how cold it is on the other side of this hill. It's currently -6 here. It has actually got a bit colder over the last hour than it was before, but that is, I guess, is the price we have to pay for having such beautiful sunshine. It really is quite stunning. And looking out there now, we've got huge, long icicles, some of them nearly 2 feet long, so that's about 40 centimeters. So it really looks amazing. See, other people have suddenly turned up. That's wonderful. So we have, as well as Anthony, there's Elizabeth and Thekla from the Hell That Is America. Yes, I woke up in the middle of the night and heard the news, what was going on in America. Unbelievable. Really shocking, deeply shocking. Good morning, Phoebe and Stella, saying good morning to Anthony Welsh. Good morning, Simon. It's very cold, yes, very unpleasant. Yes, Anthony. And Gary and Michael, Maria, good morning. And Ian. Oh, -20. I hope it doesn't go down to -20 here. The walls in this little house that I'm in are only this wide, so you really feel it coming through the walls very strongly. And -20 would be really unpleasant. Good morning there, Beverly. God bless you. Well, some of you, of course, today is Christmas Day. And Jovan, there you are. Christ is born. I was about to say that just this moment, and I saw your message. Christ is born. May God bless you for this Christmas and your feast. The snow is still here. It's extremely cold. We've got about 4 inches of snow out there, and very bright sunshine, beautiful blue sky. And of course, nowadays we have no airplanes flying over. The sky is uniformly blue without those streaks that go over the top of it. So it looks even more wonderful. I think it was yesterday sometime, or it might even have been this morning, when I went outside and wondered what on earth that noise could be. It was a very high altitude aeroplane going over. So it sounded really quite extraordinary. Good morning, Father Christopher. Your prayers. There we go. So everybody there sitting there eating their turkeys all over again and able to buy their Christmas presents at cut down prices and their Christmas crackers for next to nothing. There we go. That's quite a big advantage. Okay. Beverly. Yes, I looked that up, Beverly. You're quite right. It does mean beaver stream. I'm not quite sure where I got the idea of aspens from. There we go. The beautiful light is there because I've had to close all the curtains, otherwise it's so bright. But as somebody said last week, it really does look as I've been transfigured. I'll give you a quick taste of that. Okay, so incredibly bright, shining straight on me. It's absolutely stunning out there. Maybe I shall switch this off and go and enjoy it. Yeah, it's lovely. Okay. Good morning, Valerie. I took that immediately after breakfast, the video earlier on than this one. It's still fairly dark. It doesn't look as dark as it really is in that video. And the last of the stars are out, and the moon is quite bright over towards the, what would it be? The south. I'm very glad indeed to hear that Beverly's mother, Gwen, is better. Thank God. Glory to God. That has cheered up the whole day. Right, on that lovely note, good morning, Margaret. God bless you. Let us have a look at a new chapter 4 of John. That is wonderful. So John chapter 4, verses 1 to 6 is what we're going to be looking at. So without any further ado, let's have a look at this. This story of the Samaritan woman comes in all 4 Gospels. It's one of the very few that does come in all 4 Gospels. Therefore, good to start on the word therefore. in Greek. You wouldn't normally do that, just as you don't normally do it in English either. But anyway, here we go. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. Okay, so a short little passage there, quite a lot within it, really. I can see other people have turned up. Maria, God bless you. You also have a good day. And Christine is there, freezing ice there. Yes, Father Gregory Hallam's tests come back negative. Yes, that is very good news. And Father Christian, sorry, you've got thick, icy fog there. We had thick, icy og yesterday. Good morning, Andrew. Right, so in verse 1, the Pharisees appear to be acting out of jealousy. The Lord knew the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples. But the Lord's mission appears to be going well. His disciples are out baptizing John's. Now, that is quite interesting in itself. There is possibly a clue in chapter 10 of John, verse 41, where the people come to the Lord because they say, John did no miracles, but Jesus also does miracles. So it's possible that the Lord is doing the miracles and the disciples are baptizing, or the disciples are baptizing and the Lord is then doing miracles. We don't know which way around, and it doesn't really matter. And then immediately John makes it clear that actually Jesus doesn't do any baptizing at all. The baptizing is being done by the disciples. Now, St. John Chrysostom, actually, the fathers altogether make a lot of this chapter, and all of them thoroughly disagree with each other over many details, which is good to know. So again, it's one of those times where you pay your money, you take your pick. But St. John Chrysostom pretty well sums up what everybody else says about this. And that is about the disciples baptizing. He says really what they're doing is they are continuing the baptism of John. They're carrying on doing the same sort of baptism as he is doing. Jesus is not yet baptizing with the Holy Spirit and with fire. That is going to come after the resurrection, when people begin to understand what it has all been about. But on the other hand, says St. John Chrysostom, this is a good way of bringing people to the Lord, to somewhere where they're going to come, presumably still by the River Jordan, and that way people will come to him, they'll be baptized, they'll see the Lord, they'll hear his preaching, which, as St. John the Baptist points out, is also, not as St. John the Evangelist points out, and St. John Chrysostom points out, is also what John the Baptist was doing too. He was baptizing in order to draw attention to Christ and away from himself. Okay, so that's the first two verses. In verse 3, it then says, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. And it's clear that this is consequent on the Pharisees hearing that he is baptizing more people. Now that's interesting. So this means that he is withdrawing really from the Pharisees. He's going away from them. Now St. Augustine says, we can take from this, therefore, that it is fine to withdraw and no sin for a servant of God to fly away from the fury of persecutors. That's a nice way of putting it. So if the persecutors are there, it is fine for you to move somewhere else. We know very well in the last century, an awful lot of people fled away from persecution in Russia, in Eastern Europe, in the Levant, in Cyprus, in Turkey, and other places like that. And they fled away, and amongst other places they came to was around here. And by doing so, accidentally, of course, they bring with them the gospel, the Orthodox faith as well, which has been to our great advantage. They could have stayed and been martyred, and many did, but others also decided that it was time to withdraw, and they went away, and those people then brought the gospel to new places, as indeed the disciples of the Lord did after the Jewish persecution, after the day of Pentecost. I suppose during the whole early mission of Saul, who became Paul, was about persecuting people, and the effect of that was to distribute people all over the Mediterranean, which meant that when he needed somewhere to stay, there were places for him to stay when he went on his missionary journeys. We also have other examples. I suppose in this country we could think of Saint Amphibolis, which actually means Saint Black Cloak. So this is what I'm wearing now. He was a priest of the Lord and was sheltered and then helped to escape to Wales by Saint Alban, who then took his place. And by doing that, the saint was then able to go to Wales and carry on the mission and the gospel there, while St. Alban received martyrdom. Or St. Polycarp, who left the city and went out to his farm out in the countryside and stayed there. So fled the one time, but when they caught up with him there, then accepted, having given everybody a meal, he gave his persecutors a meal, entertained them royally, and they fell in love with him, and then had to arrest him and take him back where he was then. They attempted to burn him to death, but in fact, they had to kill him with a sword. Okay, so running away from persecutors is not an act of cowardice, it is a sensible thing to do, and it's perfectly legitimate thing to do. Okay, carrying on in verse 3, it says, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. Now, the quick way to go to Galilee is a way that we've already come across in Mark. I've forgotten actually whereabouts in Mark, but what you do is you go up through Transjordan, the eastern side of the Jordan River. Some people say that this shows now that John is in prison and the Lord is going to begin his ministry proper. But we don't know that, and there's no clue given about that in this text. And going back to what I said before, I was nearly going to make a joke then, but I'm going to resist it. Going back to what I said before, it is a good idea to keep each gospel complete in itself and try and go for references within that gospel rather than looking elsewhere to try and see what else might have been going on. And that's certainly not what the intention of the gospel writer was. Okay, but it is possible that John is now in prison and the Pharisees are now beginning to persecute the Lord. As a result, we really have no clue about that. Anyway, the Lord is on the way to Galilee, and he's going in a strange way. It says in verse 4, in English it says, but he needed to go through Samaria. And the emphasis here is on the word needed. Okay? He doesn't have to. There's a shorter way, but he needs to go through that way. Okay? It's necessary for him to go that way. Why is it necessary? It's necessary for him to go that way so that he meets Photini, the woman at the well at Samaria. That's why he needs to go that way. John the Evangelist only uses this word, ide, which is the Greek word ide, needed, to show when something is God's will. Okay, this is God's will. It is God's will that Jesus, God, goes through this particular little town. Okay, and therefore he's in Samaria. Now, Samaria in itself is an interesting place from 6 points of view, which help to describe the story and show why it's very important that the Lord goes through here. Now, the disciples are going to do something similar after the resurrection. Okay, so the Lord has been in Judea, he's been in Jerusalem, he's had problems with the Pharisees, with the Jewish authorities, and he's now going away to Galilee via Samaria. This is exactly what the apostles do after the resurrection. They also leave Jerusalem and Judea, they go to Samaria, and they go to Galilee, and from there they go to the ends of the world, which, as I've said before, is just where I'm sitting now. These are the ends of the earth here. But the Samaritans, interesting. Who are they, and why are they interesting here? Well, number one, they were remnants of Israelites who were not deported in 722 before Christ to Babylon. So they were the remnants of the northern kingdom that broke away from the southern kingdom. And these people were taken into exile, but there were some who were left behind. When that happened, people were then imported by the Assyrians. So this is number two. People were then imported by the Assyrians from Assyria and Babylon to take their place. They're colonists and the ground was good, so this is a good place for them to come, and they're brought there in order to carry on farming the area and so on. So that's number two reason why they're interesting. So you've got a mixed population here, a mixed background, and people thinking that it's wonderful to be purely one thing or some other thing. Here we've got a mixed population, and for the people in Judea, that was a sort of bastard race. Okay, not a nice way of talking about it, but that's how they'd have thought about it. Number three, these people who are Samaritans, who had an awful lot of the Jewish religion in them, refused to worship in Jerusalem and therefore didn't pay any taxes there either, and didn't support that, and didn't support the temple, and therefore the Jewish people hated them even more. They hated each other, actually. Fourthly, the people in Samaria had hindered the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. You can read all about it in the Old Testament. Okay, when they came back from exile, they wanted to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and the Syrians said, if you do that, then Jerusalem becomes a strong city again, and that's the last thing that we want. Okay, fifthly, number five, the Samaritans in the 2nd century BC helped the Syrians now in their anti-Jewish wars. And then finally, number six, the Jewish high priest in 128 BC went to Mount Gerizim and burnt down the temple that was there. Okay, now these are all sorts of things that have the effect of causing a certain amount of annoyance between people. And indeed, there was a considerable amount of annoyance. You only have to think about these islands at the ends of the earth where we are now, and think about the wonderful relationship that England enjoys with Scotland, or England enjoys with Wales, or England enjoys with Ireland. To know that these things can hang on for centuries. All sorts of bad things done by the English to those other peoples have understandably raised the hackles of the various Celtic nations. Okay, and the same has happened here. So the Jews and the Samaritans, I'll say about whereabouts in a moment, Stella, around the city of Nablus, basically. There are still Samaritans now. There are very few of them. I'm talking about in the low hundreds of thousands, and they only marry within their own religion, their own Samaritan religion, And an awful lot of those Samaritans have now left the Middle East. So they are spread all over the world. They don't really do anything in the way of their own evangelism. They don't convert anybody. An awful lot of them became Christian and continue to become Christian. And therefore the numbers of Samaritans are hugely depleted. I think it's actually only in something like 150,000. So not very many. Okay. So you have this certain amount of irritation going on between them. In fact, they hated each other. So the Lord comes to a city of Samaria, verse 5, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now, Sychar in Samaria is possibly, most probably, the town called Ascar now. It's tiny, absolutely minute, matter of, say, less than 500 meters from end to end, and nowadays completely surrounded by factories and fields and other things around it. It happens to be about, according to my measurement, using my finger on Google Earth to try and pace it out, about 1.5 kilometers, or if you prefer the British, 1.5 kilometers. Crazy way of calling something. It's most obviously kilometers. Otherwise you'd call it millimeters, wouldn't you, and centimeters. But you don't. You call it millimeters, centimeters, and kilometers. It's obvious. Why on earth we call them kilometers in this country, I don't know. Anyway, approximately 1.5 kilometers away, northeast, from Jacob's well. So when Fotini puts on her wellies and goes off to collect water from this well, she's got quite a long way to go. We'll come on to that tomorrow, God willing. Okay. One of the nice things about this little town nowadays is there's a very large ice cream factory there. Now you're talking. So Saint Fotini would have had to have left her house. She would have gone south out through the city wall. She'd have turned right rather, and pottered along there. She'd have gone past the ice cream factory, past the Bank of Palestine, past the shop called Stop and Shop, and the medical center, and then by and by she'd have reached Jacob's well. Okay, there we go. Now Saint Theophilus says, why is it that we're given this extra detail, which we should know already about Jacob's well, that is given to Jacob, by Jacob to his son Joseph? Well, Saint Theophilus makes this very good point here. The well was given to Joseph as a sign of his faithfulness, okay? But it was lost in the deportation by the Jews, by the Israelites, as a result of their impiety. So what is given by God can also be taken by God. Same as we had yesterday, really. The people choose their own punishment. They follow God, and by doing so, things accrue to them. They despise God, and by doing so, things get lost to them. And this is an example here. Now, also in verse 6 rather, we have this other wonderful thing, that the Lord is now weary. And that is important. Up till now, we've concentrated hugely on the divinity of Christ, all the way through. Divinity, 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 divinity. And now we have the Lord Jesus is wearied. Number one, that expresses his humanity. Like me, if I was to walk from Judea to Jacob's well, and I'm twice the age that he would have been at the time, I would be extremely wearied. It would have been hot and sticky and unpleasant. But number two, the Lord also expends his energy on the gospel, expending his energy, taking the gospel to a heretical group of people outside the faith. And that, I think, is also very important to bear in mind here. And the fathers do also. Okay? And what time is it? It's about the 6th hour. The fathers rather quaintly also expend a good deal of ink talking about the 6th hour. We're talking about midday here. You could count in such a way that comes to 6 o'clock in the morning, but then you have to say that the crucifixion also happened at 6 in the morning. In some ways, in this story, it makes much more sense if it's at 6 o'clock in the morning, because that explains why it is that Saint Fotini will be hurrying off to get water in the cool of the day. But if that was the case, the disciples, they would have been traveling all night, and the Lord would be more likely to have gone to sleep rather than be weary. And also, there'd be lots of other people there, also women, collecting water at the well. So I think we can say, without too much doubt, that we're talking about the 6th hour being midday, hot and sticky. And the Lord is sitting epitis pigi. Okay, epitis pigi. It actually means on the well. And by that we can probably surmise the well has got a small wall running around it. The current one doesn't. You go and look at it in pictures. Just put that into Nicosia or something, and you'll see that the current one doesn't. It's got a very nice church built all round it and on it. And in 1977, the priest who looked after the well there was martyred. It's a terrible thing. So we can imagine the Lord, tired, hot, sticky, very human, sitting on the wall that runs around the well. The fathers like to talk about the well itself being deep, being dark, it being cold in there, and it being the 6th, being the time, the 6th hour. This is halfway through the day and therefore halfway through the life. And the disciples going into town, the Lord despising going into town, withdrawing himself from material things. But I think it is probably easier for us to say the Lord, being the leader, took this opportunity to tell everybody else to go and do something. Go into town, here's the money, go and do some shopping. I'm sitting on this convenient wall. Bye-bye, come back soon. Okay, we'll carry on from that later on. Ooh, I see all sorts of things being said about this over here. Let's have a look, see who they've been saying what. Yeah, lots of people also delighted at Beverly's good news. Cold, frosty, and misty in Worcestershire. Well, it's glorious here. Phoebe says St. Cyprian of Carthage withdrew from Carthage so he could keep managing his diocese. Quite right. That was fine, but on the other hand, he also condemned those people who stayed but changed their religion, denied their religion. Today's Samaritans, we talked about that. Small population of Samaritans, most became Christian during the Apostolic Mission, yes. Andrew, good morning to, thank you very much. I saw that you liked the monastery website, SS Jones. Thank you for that, God bless you. Andrew says, the English tend to bash themselves while the smaller Celtic nations glorify their history. Well, I think if you look at the castles, you can see who the powerful ones were. Good morning, Aris. Ice cream, that's what's wanted. Carl Ahmed, talking to Andrew. I read an article recently on the Road to Emmaus Journal, which is a superb journal, by the way, which covered the earliest periods of the church here. Divisions of the Celts, the Anglo-Saxons, have certainly been overstated here. I can talk nicely. I'm about half of each. Christos, a very spiritual question. What is the joke story you resisted to say before? Oh, yeah. I can say it now, seeing as we're on 30 minutes, and I don't think Margaret will mind too much. When I was teaching, quite a number of children would quote themselves. Let's say, as I said earlier, and I used to put an asterisk next to it and write in the margin. I'd say, as I said before, it's very vulgar to quote yourself. And in 20 odd years of teaching, not a single child ever noticed that this was a joke. Oh dear. Apropos of centimeters, meters, and kilometers, brings me back also to counting. The crazy way that we count in English. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got no problems with that at all. Then we go 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I have problems with that. Then we go 21. I have problems with that. It would be much more sensible and far easier to learn for everybody concerned if we counted like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1t. 1t1, 1t2, 1t3, 1t4, 1t5, 1t6, 1t7, 1t8, 1t9, 2t. And then you can go up to 3t. 4t is already correct. 5t just needs a little bit of correction. 60, 70, 80, 90, fine. And then you can change. So what we now call 100, you could then call 10t. Okay? And so 100, you then get 10t1, t1. At 1,000, you can see how this would work. And it'd be so easy to learn. 10t1, t1 would be terribly easy to do. 10t1, t2, 10t2, t3. All of you know exactly what it is I'm talking about. Okay? It'd be far easier to learn. And other languages, they could do exactly the same thing. Brother Daniel pointed out to me yesterday, Katra Van Dies. What a crazy way of counting up to 90, honestly. Well, there we go. Okay? Oh, dear, dear, dear. Right. Okay, right. No. Oh, yes, gasometer. Yes. We don't call that. Can't pronounce that one now. Have to. Oh, dear. I've got a fit of the giggles now, so. Gasometers. Kilometers. Kilometers. Gasometers. Yeah, I think gasometers, that'd be much better, wouldn't it? So, I don't know who to blame. This morning, let's blame the Americans. They seem to be having enough troubles. They won't notice a bit more. Dear, oh dear. Pray for each other. Pray for the United States. I mean, this is really important. They've made themselves, pride themselves in being leaders of free people, and then something like this happens. Shocking. Right, thank God for Gwen's return to health, and pray, please, continue to pray for Joel's mother, Noreen. We haven't had any further on that. Continue to pray for Joseph, who is very ill and has COVID as well. And if you could pray for the soul of Bishop Luca, who is in Damascus, he's second of the patriarch's personal household who has died of COVID. This particular bishop was very kind to me 20 years ago and took me around and organized my trip around Damascus, and then took me with him to a wonderful monastery called Saidnaya, Our Lady's Monastery, at a place called Saidnaya, and left me there, wonderfully left me there. It was a fantastic time I had there, a really extraordinary place to be. Okie dokie, right. God bless you all. Happy feast to those who are celebrating Christmas. Happy feast to those who are in the after feast of Theophany. Happy feast to all those people named after St. John the Forerunner and Baptist. as it's his synaxis today. I have an abacus actually in the other house. It's how I learnt to count when I was a child. And nowadays, when I count normally, I count in Farsi because I understand those numbers better than in English. Okay, God bless you and keep you. Pray for this idiot here as well.